This month, the world is recognizing Literacy Day, and we believe that among the many life skills that are essential to our sustenance, financial literacy is one. And as a corollary, crypto literacy. And like in the world of vaccines, really, the crypto newscape is rife with FUD, that's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And today, I have two people whose careers are currently engaged with the blockchain enabled innovations ecosystem, and they're leading thought leaders in this space. And they're going to help us understand how we can deliver clarity of thought and awareness to the millions and potentially billions who will engage with cryptocurrencies and the technologies that blockchain is enabled. So, a big hello to Swapnil Pawar, the founder of ASQI India, ASQI India. They're an investment technology company. Swapnil, good to have you join us on the series.
Thanks, Ashwin. Glad to be here.
And welcome back to Siddharth Menon, the co-founder and COO at WazirX, India's leading crypto exchange. Welcome back, Siddharth.
Same here. Nice to be here.
So, gentlemen, 10 years back, cryptocurrencies were a cool thing to talk about, and today it's a cool thing to own. So clearly, we've come a long way, right? But again, like I said, the FUD factor is high with disinformation all around. So, from your perspective, from an industry perspective, what are the largest challenges and misunderstandings that you want to clear out? Swapnil?
So I think there is a great revolutionary aspect to blockchain, and Bitcoin has shown us that in great demonstration over the last 10 years, and Ethereum built on top of that. Unfortunately, what's happened is that there is a lot of hype around Bitcoin, Ethereum, whole crypto space, and good entrepreneurs are building on that to create interesting solutions. And there are a lot of scamsters who are just trying to benefit from this hype, creating fairly questionable coins or NFTs, etc. And that's unnecessarily getting a bad rap for the good ones. I think the ratio probably is more like 95% good ones and 5% scams, but media probably focuses a bit more on the 5%. So I think to me, it's a bit of a challenge, and lack of regulatory clarity in locations like India, huge challenge, because everyone I speak to amongst my friends says that I would love to be an investor in crypto, but what if tomorrow it's deemed illegal? I'll have to sell everything. And what if I don't find a market for it? And so on and so forth it goes.
Now, the thing about the illegal is such a recurring theme, Swapnil, because we've done a lot of events with WazirX. We spoke about NFTs, we've done AMAs, and a question that comes just back. In fact, with Siddharth itself, we had a discussion about a couple of weeks back, and one of the recurring themes was illegal hai kya? I mean, it's and we'll talk about regulators in a moment. Siddharth, from your perspective as a crypto exchange, the misinformation you want to just clear out.
Right. I think the most important misinformation is, again, we keep repeating this again, is that crypto is not illegal in India. However, it's also not regulated. So regulation and legality is completely two different things, right? We know that it's always the innovation leads regulation. So whenever we talk about any new things that's coming in, it's not necessarily there's already a regulatory framework for that. And cryptocurrency somewhere falls into that. And it's not just India, but across the world. Everybody's trying to figure out how to fine tune these things to have a very regulatory framework. And also what Swapnil rightly mentioned, right? Like, so you have two types of very important aspect here. One is the builders aspect, the entrepreneurs and the technology behind it, which is by itself is like a very revolutionary thing. There are a lot of innovation happening there, a lot more potential that, as a builder, I know where this can go. And there's also another big layer on top, that is the markets, right? So where the price and everything around it. Now, what happens is the technology layer is going through a lot of innovation, a lot of problem solving and many things around that. But this market layers is where there's sometimes too much gap in between, right? Like, so this is where probably misinformation literally seeps in, trying to trend a certain wrong projects in a wrong way, or trying to build out a different sentiments around what this underlying technology is. So fundamentally we know where it is going, but then there are these actors who probably try to create more misinformation and try to take advantage of that. So like what Swapnil said, like there are even if there are like 10 or 20 good projects, there will be like 50 or 60 extra more, which probably is scam or not scam. And it's very difficult, right? Like technology by itself, or any venture by itself is not an easy venture, even though it's not for scamming, but it sometimes fails, sometimes go big. But this is where you have to be aware of these things, understand. A lot of people are first-time investors in general, right? Like they're probably not even invested in stock markets or something around it. So their information, the gap between how markets work, how technology works, is very different. So fundamentally, if you do learn a lot about it, you're far more, in my opinion, sort of safeguarding yourself in, when it comes to the market sentiments, and understand what you're getting into. So I guess these are like, a couple of things that where the gaps are, and where the whole industry is sort of working towards. And having said that, by the way, I mean, I'm coming from like 2016, 2014, 15, 16, right? So in 16 or 17 or even 18, by the way, for you to understand about this industry, to even understand about what Bitcoin, what it does, what it can do, was all scattered, because you had to go to these forums, write questions, see what people are saying, and try to get a perception about what this can become. And it was very difficult. But luckily, 2021, you have more structured content coming in. A lot more people are putting a lot more effort into building out, a nice framework for people to get on board. Like, imagine you guys, Business Insider, like working so hard to bring out the right information in a structured way to a lot more people, where we are trying to spread the right awareness to a lot more people. And you can't even imagine, something like that in 16 or 17. So I'm pretty glad, like, where we are heading, and I hope this continues, and we have, a lot more right information spread across, not just India, but across the world.
I when you speak about, regulation following innovation, I remember a couple of years back, a meeting of a few entrepreneurs in Bangalore. We're just sitting as an extended, listening audience, and one of them said, okay, we have a new technology here, a new way of thinking. We've got 3 years before regulation comes. Let's get as innovative as possible. And I'm like,
yeah. So I think it's builder's dilemma, right? Like, they know there's a lot of innovation, but you don't know how regulations will come on board.
Yeah, but that's a complex problem in itself, right? In the sense that educating the regulator is as important as educating the consumer. And in India, perhaps it's more important, because the consumer follows the regulator's lead, even though, in the sense that, you might say that, okay, think otherwise, and you give them more factual data points. How are you guys thinking about this? This is a chicken or an egg problem. How do you go about this?
So, well, the way we think about this is that let's understand the spirit of regulations and the letter of regulations, right? I have a very live example of this. About 6-7 years ago, in non-crypto space, right? P2P lending in India, it was just new. And in US, it had taken off like anything, and the regulators had caught up in US, and the laws were clear. In India, technically, P2P lending, when it started, was illegal, just to put it explicitly out there. It was explicitly illegal. It wasn't just in a gray area. But people did it anyway. And then regulators caught up, and then RBI specified a set of rules saying this is how you can do P2P lending, this is where you can't go, etc. And then became nicely regulated, with still evolving, but at least it came in the mainstream. So that's, I guess, how it works. So the point that worked in favor of P2P lending is that it wasn't in a bad spirit. It wasn't trying to scam anyone. It was just trying to maybe alter an archaic law from inside by demonstrating that it is beneficial to change the law. So in a similar vein, we are hoping that crypto assets in general, so I'm using the word crypto assets to avoid all this angst about currency and so on. So crypto assets, including cryptocurrencies, let's say, generalized crypto assets have so many benefits for all concerned, including, most importantly, investors, and potentially in future even borrowers, if we go through DeFi and so on, that there is enough for regulators to chew over and say, okay, this part works well, this part doesn't work well. And the fact of the matter is, the regulators can't and shouldn't work in a vacuum, doing armchair discussions about what's right for the public and what's not. It's best if it actually goes through some degree of actual use cases, and then the regulators sort of get educated through demonstrated experience of people, rather than saying this works, this doesn't work. Sandboxing, Indian regulators are coming up with on and off, but while the concept is great, the implementation hasn't been exactly conducive for entrepreneurial activities. But at least that gives us a sense that Sandboxing is there, which means you can also sandbox within a narrow confines of staying in the right spirit. Eventually, regulations will catch up. Don't do anything which you think is wrong or very gray. Do things which you think are just at worst in on paper in gray area, but in spirit are clearly things that you can tell your parents about and still not get reprimanded, to put it simply.
Siddharth?
I think that's a very important point, right? Like, so you can't grow. India is a very progressive country, right? So we've been challenged with a lot more innovation that is happening across, especially in the fintech area. I know what Swapnil also rightly mentioned, and it's not just on those areas. Like me as a hobbyist, I used to fly a lot of drones, right? Like, so, and there was a time in India where drones were tabooed. If I was carrying my drones, it was like, hey, you're doing something very illegal. But there was like certain frameworks around that, which which eventually DGC and most of the regulators caught up. So, like I said, it's very difficult to immediately get a sense of it and say, hey, shut your eyes, because this innovation is ultimately going to come on board. It's just about the regulation and tuning it really well. Having said that, right, like when we work with government in general, what government, especially in the crypto space, there's so many things happening. Like, something that we learned probably a year back has completely changed today. So it's very difficult even for us to catch up. I mean, imagine for the government, right? So, but again, we have to start with basics. And what's very important, right? For example, is what they would really, as a government, is like, sort of if they can relate to this whole markets or the cryptocurrency or the crypto assets to something that they already know, right? So something that they can sort of relate to and then start building a framework around it. For example, for a long time, in fact, even now, right, like we are still struggling to classify cryptocurrency, right, like or crypto assets in India. We don't know whether to call this under commodity, security, and many other things. Like I think in 2018 or 19, when the whole GER community was actually writing up on the whole crypto assets, they had a very different perspective. They thought it was currency was something that would probably replace INR, but that was not true, right? Eventually, even Supreme Court, when we had the conversation on the banking ban, they also realized cryptocurrency is not essentially a threat to INR, but it's something else, right? It probably should be classified, but they did not talk about it. They just knew that it's not that it's not as simple as say calling it a currency. So this is where the regulators are also catching up. They're also trying to understand, and primarily, I think the step one, which I believe should come out very soon, is the first thing is the classification of how to classify this cryptocurrency. There are like security cryptocurrency, there are assets, and there are currency by itself. There's utility assets, and I think that's step one for all of us. And also, if you have listened to what Nirmala Sitharaman ma'am have been talking about, is like India has been leading the whole fintech dunya, across the world, and if we've been known for that. And now we are talking about something major revolution that is happening in this industry. She said that they would like to approach this in a very calibrated way, which means it's a very right approach, right outlook towards how they want to look at this industry and calibrate it out and make sure it's able to innovate and give it its space. And at the same time, it's not probably breaking any major laws around or or sentiments in the whole framework of regulation. So I think when you think about it, these are like learnings that we need to work with the government to educate them what the industry is happening, especially for even for folks like us who are like just learning every day how things change, and sort of concise it and have open conversation with them and tell them how do we start there. Baby step at a time, and I'm pretty sure over time the government is also will be much aware of how to do this, and pretty looking forward for all those things here.
A lot of work to be done, and I think a lot of that heavy lifting is going to be done by tech itself, right? Because crypto is tech heavy, and both of you are at some level creating products, right? So in this world where all of you are creating tech products, and in another world you have people who are still using older means like calling up a investment manager and say, "Yeah, buy this stock for me." Demat accounts aren't really as pervasive as a lot of us think to be. There are people who still make those phone calls. How do you see tech really bridging this divide? What are you thinking from a product perspective that is like, what, here's how I want to take the product so that there'd be a wider group of people who can consume us and experience us?
Often enough, when I'm asked of the whole crypto space or blockchain space, I always refer to cryptocurrency as the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot more to blockchain than cryptocurrencies. And one of the projects that we are ourselves working on is mainstreaming blockchains beyond cryptocurrencies into general assets, stocks, bonds, properties, and so on. There are several benefits to tokenizing assets, and making them available on a blockchain framework, whether it's in this blockchain or that, but making it available as tokens goes way beyond digitalizing assets that happened with the DMAT movement, right? Stocks became from paper to DMAT, got several benefits in the process. We think that asset represented as a blockchain token has benefits even beyond that, which is whether it's fractionalizing, creating liquidity, wider access at smaller ticket sizes, a general democratization of the investment world, and then on the back of that, the lending space, and a thorough decentralization in both these spaces, investing and lending, can come about on the back of a solid blockchain infrastructure. And so that's our core area of focus right now. So, I mean, I do think that in the next 10 years, blockchain technology will fundamentally alter the very architecture of financial services in investing as well as in lending, potentially in insurance as well. What cryptocurrency ecosystem is doing is it's in some sense sandboxing a lot of these technologies. So Ethereum, for example, for smart contracts. So Bitcoin to start with for just decentralization, then Ethereum for smart contracts, then others for Polkadot for interoperability, Uniswap for liquidity provision, Avalanche for DeFi. All of these technologies today are in crypto space, but their adoption into the wider non-crypto standard asset domain is just a matter of hard work by lots of entrepreneurs like us. And so we're hoping that revolution makes crypto and crypto assets and blockchain really immediately useful in a social way for small investors, small borrowers, small lenders, and then generally democratizes finance beyond what it's been so far. So yeah, that's where we are on this.
Siddharth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you think about I believe, right, like I believe technology can scale and across generations, right? Like, so my grandma or my parents, they never grew up in the whole WhatsApp era. They never had WhatsApp when they grew up, but today they are pretty comfortable with using WhatsApp, having, conversation, video call, whatever you can think about. And technology enables you to do this. So back in, like, say 2000, 2004, 2005, it was all about getting all the businesses online, right? Like, so suddenly shopping started coming online, reading started happening online, many things happened. It was all about let's go online, right? www. So there was that revolution where now we are so used to it, we are comfortable with it, where now I can make more friends online, right? So it's being more social online rather than meeting a lot more people online. And the technology has enabled us to do that, and it has impacted not just our generation but across all generations, right? It's not something that has happened there. Now we are coming to another big era, which even Swapnil spoke about, is we are going into an era of tokenization, right? When we talk about the era of tokenization is we are trying to tokenize certain things and make it more digital, because now we are living in a more digital era where everything is about being digital. We are thinking about making INR more digital. We are thinking about, having a native, currency on the internet, or native gold on the internet, many things. And now every entrepreneur is now thinking about, how do I digitalize it or tokenize these things, right? That eventually could also be like, your land can be tokenized as an NFT to, buy and sell, or even your bonds, your contracts, many things can be tokenized. And like Swapnil said, we're just at the tip of the iceberg where all these things have been just tested, tried, a few things here, there, and we know where it can go. But now is when the whole wave will come, where we start building towards these things. And coming to the whole generation, I believe that just like how we were able to catch up into a lot more things across generation, I believe even the current generation, for folks who are still, probably working on something that is still naive, what we think is naive, I'm pretty sure they will also catch up to this and start following this, next big thing.
50 years down the line, we could be looking at some new technology as very naive while we are worshipping cryptocurrency. Talking about, tokenization, contracts, Ethereum, right? We have a forum in Business Insider called Cryptosphere, where we usually discuss a lot on, everything from the world of cryptocurrency. And Prabjot, who's one of our admins out there and who writes for us, was remarking saying that there's so much of clarification that people are seeking. And one of the things that almost everybody wants to know is that, what should I buy and what is dangerous? So for those people who don't want to read the prospectus before buying stocks, what are some must-have features in a cryptocurrency that would immediately signal to you that it is legit? And the second part of the question is, what's a red flag? What are both of these simple thumb rule, litmus level indicators that can help the larger population really take their first step into the world of crypto and blockchain investing?
I'd done a presentation some time back on these aspects, right? And the answer is actually simpler than what it would be for stocks, for example. Right? They will have to look at management and then dividends and so on. Here it's actually relatively simple. You need to make sure that it's a decentralized coin. What I mean by that is that it's not run by one company, one node, one group of people, small group of clique of people, but it's thoroughly and genuinely decentralized with lots of nodes participating in its mining / validation, etc. Secondly, good thing to have is a deep ecosystem, again, non-central, a deep ecosystem of developers working on the core tech. Implicitly, I'm assuming that the coin or the specific crypto asset represents a technology rather than just a specific, a meme, if you will. So personally, I stay away from new coins for that reason. NFTs are interesting innovation, but they also you need to understand the underlying asset that they represent, which could be digital or non-digital. So for a newcomer, it might actually be a bit more speculative. But within the crypto space, it's safer to stick to the big ones, the top 5, top 10 or so, and just sort of get your feet wet and then gradually learn a bit more. So if I were to say specifically name 5 of them, I would say the usual suspects: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Polkadot, Aave, Uniswap, and so on. And now Polygon, Matic, our own homegrown currency. So, but what to stay away from, the red flags. I mean, I personally think all meme coins are extremely dangerous, and the top of that list is Dogecoin, and so I stay away from Dogecoin with a barge pole. Everyone else to do the same. Shiba Inu, same logic. I mean, it trades a lot, sure, but there's no tech behind it. What started out as a joke, maybe it shouldn't necessarily have that much of market cap, but that's for people to decide. I don't invest in it. NFTs also, I'd much rather invest in NFTs which come from true creators. Like if there's an artist creating NFT on his or her art, that's great. But if I don't know of the artist, just because it's an NFT doesn't mean I have to buy it. So that's I guess the distinction I would make. The red flag for a major coin, let's assume that it has a tech and developer ecosystem and everything, but still a red flag would be uncertain supply. If the coin creators can suddenly double the supply and own that, then it's just a matter of funny money. Like Bitcoin, for example, you can't possibly own a Bitcoin without mining or buying. But if somebody can just do airdrop of a bunch of coins to you, some other new coin, then it could be tricky, and your coin can become like worth half or 1/3 of its value overnight. So yeah, that's red flags for you.
Do you stress out every time Elon Musk tweets?
No, it's an opportunity more so than not. Right? If you believe in the long-term prospect of technology, Elon gives you the opportunity to enter the markets again.
Okay. So that your thumb rules for understanding what's legit and what's like steering?
Swapnil has covered a lot of things, primarily, right? Like about identifying a token, what you should go about. But even like the first step that I would suggest is, to understand yourself, your risk appetite, right? The money that you're putting on the table, how much you're willing to let go of, and without understanding, right? Because it feels like it's easy money, but there's nothing easy about it, right? Like the right way to do that is actually to learn about these aspects, learn about these projects, and then get into it. Never just because some guy told you about certain projects, just get onto it, especially your friends or anybody on Twitter, just like that. Take your time, don't jump onto because the price is going up and it might just go up at 10 more percent. That's where your greed kicks in. So you have to be a bit more disciplined about how you control your self, because that essentially influence a lot of mistakes that you do, right? Correctness and mistakes is actually driven by this whole greed and fear, when we talk about. Now, coming to the fundamentals of how you would want to divide this. If you're just getting started, you have Ethereum and Bitcoin. I would just stick to start with, right? Like, spend more time into understanding these things before jumping onto anything else. Like, doesn't matter if you're talking about NFT. I think it's something that you would probably should get into maybe after, like, you have understood how things are moving, rather than just follow a trend. And sometimes it's very difficult emotionally to keep up. You might hear your friend saying, hey, I put like, say, 1 lakh, and now it's like, say, 10 lakhs. And that might, excite you to do something like that, but not necessarily it will be true for you. So be very cautious about how you manage risk, because that's something that we have not taught, right? Like, not many people are taught how to manage risk, what's the risk reward and things around it. Learn a bit more about it, especially at the market side. And if you're looking at a very long-term investment, focus on teams, focus on who are the teams, what they have done in the past, and their capabilities, and understand these things. This is apart from what just Swapnil said, because tokenomics and all those things what he's mentioned is also very important, right? But these are things that you'll have to have a checklist on, try to understand, and then risk. So first of all, don't fall for greed or like someone said, meme coin or anything around it, because you have to understand there's an underlying value for that, right? Like, if it's not, you could lose everything that you have put, and that is where the whole risk is. So be very careful, stick to maybe top 2 coins, Bitcoin and Ethereum, before you jump into anything else, and just stay there. Understand everything else, only then you take your step more deeper into it.
In the words of my financial advisor, go long.
I would add a thing to what Siddharth said. There's a common misconception amongst investors that just because it's a low price coin, it's a good coin to buy. And some scamsters have taken advantage of that. Bitcoin is very expensive, 36 lakh or thereabouts.
Yeah.
But your price of the coin doesn't matter to you, right? It's the returns that matter. So you put it when it was 36 and became 72, you doubled your money. It doesn't matter what the starting price was, and it's available even at 100 rupees. So it's not you have to put 36 lakh to buy it. So yeah, just to add to what Siddharth was saying, you can start with these two and go a long way.
Yeah, you can buy Bitcoin even worth $500 or $100. Doesn't mean it's 36 lakhs. You have to buy worth 36 lakhs. So once you understand, you can break it down. It's not unlike stocks, where you can break this down to how much you can buy for.
Yeah, and I mean, that comes to the crux of our discussion, right? To educate people that you don't have to spend 36 lakhs to buy a Bitcoin. You can buy a 1,000th and the 10,000 fraction and still have a valuable asset, which is going to give you returns once you stay in there. That is insightful, gentlemen. I'm going to end this chat with an incredibly tough question. If I had to explain cryptocurrency to a 70-year-old stocks and mutual funds investor, how would you go about it?
That's tough.
And they happen to be the biggest audiences who are usually glued to financial television and thinking where to put in money. So, and to also really, this is important for us from a news publications perspective, because we are almost always trying to find ways of simplifying it without diluting it. And that's a bit of a challenge in the sense that you can't do both. And we always find a various compromise in saying that, okay, I'm slightly diluting the meaning, but it's simpler. And you never manage to get the entire picture with 2020 clarity at one shot. So how do you guys go about it?
Well, that's a tough challenge, but let's say if I were to say it, explain it to the earlier generation, I would say the following. Just as information exchanges hands on internet now, as Web 2.0, as they call it, value now can be exchanged over the net as tokens, whether it's cryptocurrencies or stocks, tokens or bond tokens or property tokens. And that's really what this entire revolution is about: transfer of value over internet in a decentralized way. So that's Web 3.0. Think of it as what happened in 2001, bubble burst, all of that, but it gave us a new technology on the back of which all of this was built, apps and video conference that we're using now and so on. Web 3.0 is a similarly revolutionary technology, and crypto is the starting point of it, the foundation of it.
Completely noted. Siddharth?
I think I have a very smaller explanation, and not very technical though. But whenever I meet somebody pretty old or previous generation, I just talk about it, right? Like every generation has an opportunity and they can see through these things, right, where it can go. Especially when we talk about stock markets, back in the days, there are only few people who actually see through, what this can be. And that was an opportunity for them, right? And probably even then they struggled to explain this to the previous generation. What was that? Similar, the whole property thing, right? Like the whole property market also blew up. I know folks who actually believed in it and literally invested in a lot more properties. And then recently we're advising me about crypto because he doesn't understand crypto and this is a bubble, etc. And all I did was, when you were buying properties and you were explaining it to your parents, you had the similar problem. And that's immediately clicked him. And he said, yeah, I understand what you mean, because, it's just that probably I have a better understanding of where it can go, but not necessarily a wrong understanding, right? So when it's not necessarily that technicality is something that need to understand, but we would have a better perspective about, because we spend more time on the internet and everything around it, know where it can go. But I think in a very hindsight, you see every generation has an opportunity. Whether it is a stock or a property or many other things that has come in every generation. I think for our generation is this, and we understand that as of now, and this is how I would put that for them.
Perhaps the one thing I would say very, very loudly to everybody who's joined us today is that these are still extremely early days. I mean, Bitcoin might have come out in 2008, 2009, but it really just started growing in the last 5-6 years. And that's really an incredibly small period of time compared to your lifetime, your lifespan, your investment appetite, and how much you can actually move around and ensure that this is something that gives you a bright future. On that note, Swapnil, Pawar, Siddharth, Menon, gentlemen, it's been a delight to have you join us here on Business Insider India. It's great to learn about how you guys are seeing this domain grow and really simplifying a lot of concepts, which are something that a lot more people should be able to listen and understand and plan their own futures with it. Thank you once again. And for all of you who joined us for this broadcast, thank you for joining us. To understand more about cryptocurrencies and NFTs and blockchain technology, always head to the Cryptosphere forum on businessinsiderindia.in. So on that note, thank you again. Take care and stay safe.